Jacob Zetterström has revealed all about Derby County and his move that potentially could become a thing in the future, with Brentford rumouring to be interested in the Swedish goalkeeper. Jacob Zetterström has finally discussed it, and this is a massive discussion in my personal opinion. Now, for me, Jacob Zetterström is a great goalkeeper. He's been phenomenal for Derby County over the course of the last few weeks. I've got a video coming out about him probably later on today in which we discuss him and his career so far and how good he's been at Derby County. So if you have not done so already, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell. But let's get into it. Now, Zetterström was rumoured to be subject to a £3.5 million bid from Premier League Brentford during the summer transfer window. And this came at a period where Derby County obviously hadn't started the season too great. And Zetterström is obviously one of Derby County's better players, in my personal opinion. And Brentford, who had already brought in, I think it was Kelleher from Liverpool, and it sort of opened that door for Zetterström to go and make the move to the Premier League. Now, whether that bid was officially made or not, I'm not entirely sure, but obviously we do now know that the interest was there, and Zetterström has given his take on it. Now, Zetterström has said that he is fully focused on Derby County and being a Derby County player and doing the best that he can do for Derby County. However, I never anticipated him to say anything else. Now, I think if we discuss transfers and things like that, as I've done time and time again on this channel, I think you have to be really open and honest with the situation in regards to, we are a championship club, we are in transition, players are going to move on. Now, in my personal opinion, no player is ever going to come out and say, I'm not really feeling Derby County anymore, I want to move on. No player really does that. And even those players that want to move, it's never a case of, oh, I'm not feeling playing for this club anymore. It's just that the club they've been offered potentially a move to is a lot bigger. You look at Isak and Liverpool, you look at Ekatike in Liverpool as well. Those sorts of situations. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Zetterström is in that sort of stratosphere, but it's one of those for me where I'm not surprised about Zetterström saying he's fully focused on Derby. We're outside of the transfer window now. That bid may not have officially come in. Derby County may have shut it down straight away and gone, he's not going anywhere for less than 10 million plus sort of thing. And then ultimately it puts Brighton in a position where they spent, I think it was 15 million on Kelleher. Why would they spend 10 million on a keeper which is arguably going to be backup? So that's something which I felt needed discussing. Now, we discussed it during the summer, the interest and how that sort of transpired for Zetterström. And I really like Zetterström. I think he's a wonderful goalkeeper. I think he's certainly getting better and better, and obviously has just been recalled to the Sweden squad. But for me, it's one of those situations where if the right offer comes in, he is gone, and his head will be turned by a Premier League club, because ultimately that puts him ahead of Johansson in the battle for Swedish number one, because I think it's Johansson at Stoke who currently is that number one at Sweden. So it's one of those for me where I'm not necessarily shocked by what he said, but I think that's more of a case of Derby County probably didn't even allow the bid, if that makes sense, which meant that Zetterström was never really sort of in discussions with Brentford and potentially seeing that move come about. Now, do I believe that Zetterström will be at Derby County for the next 3 or 4 years? I think it all depends on what happens with us. If we get promoted this year, of course, I think Zetterström stays. If we don't get promoted this year and he has a really good season like he is doing up until this point, I certainly think there's going to be opportunities, there's going to be offers for him to be able to, whether it be step into a top 5 European league or step up to the Premier League, he's going to get that opportunity because, in my opinion, he is 100% good enough to play at that level. Don't get me wrong, there is still certain things where he does still need a little bit of development, but it's one of those things for me where he's not quite at the peak of his powers, and I think with goalkeepers, I don't really think they hit that until like 28, 29, 30, and I think he's only about 25, 26. So it's one of those situations for me where he's only going to get better and better. He can probably play well until his late 30s, obviously depending on head injuries and stuff like that, because he's been one of those people for me where he definitely has that sort of quality and that sort of... yes, there's things to improve on. Distribution, that would be the main one. But other than that, I think he's a brilliant goalkeeper. And I'm not going to turn around and say that he's one of the best goalkeepers in the league, because I think right now he probably isn't. But he's certainly up there within the conversation for, out of the top 6, one of the best keepers in that sort of top 6. If you put all the keepers in a list, I think he is in the top 6 sort of bracket for me. Now, I personally believe anything below £10 million should be instantly rejected. If an offer does come in from Brentford, obviously it's one of those where you have to really discuss sort of with Zetterström where he's going to go, what he thinks, is he going to play? Like, that is the big thing for me. Like, that's why I say it's going to be 10 to 15 million pounds for Zetterström to move on, because 1, we have to find a replacement, and 2, is he really going to play? That is the thing. And I don't think a move to Brentford puts him as a starter, let alone even a keeper getting that much game time, in complete honesty. So for me, if I was Jacob Zetterström, I would 100% be focused on Derby County and playing football. He will get a move and he will become a starter in the Premier League at some point over the course of the next 5 years, in my opinion. But obviously, that again all depends on how he plays, how Derby play, and all things like that. Obviously, Derby, so far this season, we're sitting 10th in the division, and he has been probably one of our standout performers. But he's 27 years old. He's still maybe two or 3 years away from being at a goalkeeper's peak. And even then, like, goalkeepers can play well into their 30s, sometimes even into their 40s. And I do believe he is one of the best keepers in this league. I think if you go back to, I think he's only probably had maybe 1 or 2 bad games. I think you look at Coventry, conceded 5. Stoke, I think, could have done a bit better for 1 or 2 of those goals. Although not necessarily his fault that we lost those games, by the way. But other than that, I think he's been brilliant. I think he was really good against, was it Norwich, where he made 4 or 5 point blank saves in the first half, and obviously we then went on to win. That obviously helped us sort of proper turn things around. You even look at the game against Oxford, he was unbelievable in that game. Yes, we lost 1-0, but it could have been 4 or 5 if it wasn't for him. I think he made 6 or 7 saves in that game, which was hugely important for Derby County to end up turning around into the position they're in now. Because yes, if you go and lose that game 4 or 5-0, Eustace's head's on a chopping block, which I believe it was heading into the Norwich game anyway. And thankfully, things have turned around, and that's huge for Derby County, and it's huge for Jacob Zetterström as well, who's been a huge part of that. So obviously, do I think he's going to leave? No. He has obviously revealed that he is focused on Derby County. Do I believe that to be 100% the case? Of course not. I think anybody who believes that a player is fully focused on one club is a little bit sort of deluded and out of it a little bit, in my personal opinion, because I believe every single player in world football, whether it be Step 7, whether it be the Premier League, whether it be playing for Barcelona, you're always looking for a step up. You're always looking for somewhere where you're going to play more, you're going to be more effective, and it's going to be better for you. So we will wait and see what does happen with that. Obviously, we are about 6 weeks away from January as it stands right now. If you haven't done so already, hit like, hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell. Let me know your thoughts on this down in the comments, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye bye, guys.